Hey everyone, welcome to Easy Vet Anatomy. This is Dr. KP Sharon, and in today's video I'm going to discuss about the carpal bones of ox species. So let's get started. The carpal bones, they are the short bones located between the distal extremity of radius and ulna above and metacarpal below. So they form a carpal joint, or it is also called as knee joint. So we'll discuss about the individual carpal bone in detail. First discuss about the radial carpal. Radial carpal, it is also called as scaphoid. So this carpal, it is the largest bone in the upper row or the proximal row of carpal. So it contains 6 faces or 6 surfaces. This surface is the proximal surface. The proximal surface is convexo-concave. So you can appreciate from this side. It is convexo-concave from before backwards, and this articulates with the distal extremity of the radius. And the second surface is the distal surface. So this surface is the distal surface. So this surface, it articulates with fused second and third carpal. And this surface is the lateral surface. So this lateral surface, you can appreciate here, it bears a facet. So facets were there for the articulation with intermediate carpal. So like this. Okay. And next, so this is the dorsal surface. Dorsal, medial and the ular surfaces, they are continuous and rough. Next carpal is intermediate carpal. So this intermediate carpal, it is a wedge shaped. It is also called as lunar carpal. And if you see here, this is the dorsal face. It is rough and it forms the base. And this is the apex. So the apex is posterior and it is prolonged medially. So the articulation with the radial carpal will be like this. This is the base and this is apex. And coming to the proximal face, the proximal face is same, convexo-concave from before backwards, and this also articulates with the distal extremity of the radius. And coming to the distal face, so you can appreciate the distal face. So in distal face, it is divided by a sagittal ridge into 2 facets for the fused second and third and for the fourth carpal. So the medial facet, this is for the fused second and third, and this lateral facet, it is for the fourth carpal. This phase is the medial phase and this phase is the lateral phase. So the medial phase, it articulates with the radial carpal. And the lateral phase, it has facets for articulation with ulnar carpal. Next carpal is the ulnar carpal. Ulnar carpal, it is also called as cuneiform. It is very irregular in shape. So this phase is the proximal phase. The proximal phase is obliquely directed backwards and downwards. And this phase is the medial phase. So this medial phase, it articulates with the intermediate carpal. So this is the facet which is present in the medial phase, which articulates with intermediate carpal. And this is the dorsal phase. The dorsal phase, it is rough and convex, whereas the ular phase, so this is the ular phase, it bears a facet for the accessory carpal. Next is the accessory carpal. Accessory carpal, it is also called as pisiform. So this is short, thick and rounded. So it is a sesamoid bone which is situated behind the ulnar carpal. So it is having again proximal face. So this is the proximal face which is narrow and rough for the flexor carpi ulnaris and ulnaris lateralis muscle. Whereas the distal face, it is somewhat broader and rough. And this face is the dorsal face. So this dorsal face, it is having a facet for ulnar carpal. If you remember the ulnar carpal, so on the ular aspect, it is having a facet for the accessory carpal. So this accessory carpal, it will go and fix to the facet which is present on the ular aspect of ulnar carpal like this. Next, coming to the carpals present in the distal row. The distal row, it is containing 2 carpals. One is fused second and third and the other one is fourth carpal. Fused second and third carpal, and this is fourth carpal. So the fused second and third carpal, it is the largest of all the carpals. So it is located towards the medial side in the distal row. If you appreciate this fused second and third, this is the proximal phase which is having 2 facets. So the larger facet which is located on the medial side, this is for the radial carpal, and the smaller one which is located on the lateral side, this is for the intermediate carpal. And coming to the distal face, so the distal face, it articulates with the large metacarpal below. And this face is the medial face, and this face is the lateral face. The lateral face, it has a facet for the fourth carpal. So we can appreciate the facets here. Two facets were there. These were for the fourth carpal. And the medial dorsal faces, they are continuous, rough and convex. Next, coming to the fourth carpal. The fourth carpal, it is also called as unciform. Proximal face, it is having two facets. So the smaller facet is for the intermediate, and the larger facet which is located laterally, it is for the ulnar carpal. In the distal face, it articulates with large metacarpal. This is the medial face. Medial face, it has a facets for the fused second and third carpal. And this dorsal and lateral faces, they are continuous and rough. So like this, medially it will articulate with fused second and third carpal. So this fused second and third carpal, it is also called as os magnum because it is the largest carpal in the ox species. Here you can make out the proximal row of carpals arranged in order from medial to lateral. So this is radial carpal, intermediate carpal, ulnar carpal. This is accessory carpal. So this is the proximal face, and this is the distal face. This face is volar face, and this face is dorsal face. From the dorsal side, you cannot appreciate the accessory carpal. It is visible from the volar aspect. The largest carpal in the proximal row is radial carpal. This is distal row of carpals in case of ox species. The largest one is fused second and third, which is located medially, and this is fourth carpal, which is located laterally. This face is the proximal face, and this face is the distal face, which articulates with metacarpal, and this face is the volar face, and this face is dorsal face. Here you can make out both the proximal and the distal row. Proximal row with radial carpal towards the medial side, intermediate, ulnar, accessory. In the distal row, medially you can appreciate fused second and third, and this is fourth carpal. Now you can see how the proximal row, it articulates with the distal row. So the radial carpal, it is having a facet in the fused second and third below, and this is the intermediate carpal having a facet in both fourth and fused second and third. And this is ulnar carpal, so which occupies the facet formed by the fourth carpal. And this accessory carpal, it will not articulate with the distal row of carpal. It articulates only with the ulnar carpal. So this is from the dorsal view. From the dorsal view, from medial to lateral, we can appreciate in the proximal row radial carpal, intermediate carpal, ulnar carpal, and to the ulnar carpal, accessory carpal is articulated. And in the distal row, from medial to lateral, so you can appreciate fused second and third and fourth carpal. Hope this video helped you. If you like this video, please do follow, like, share and subscribe to Easy Vet Anatomy. Thank you.